Mad by beccaliz27. Chapter 20. Eloise. Eloise was quiet as she and Michael walked Penelope back to Featherington House. Eloise could see that Penelope was seething with anger, and she could not fault her for that. Her brother had behaved abominably. To think he had any say in who she courted was absolutely preposterous, especially after the remarks he had made last season. As they were nearing the Featherington house, Eloise looked down at Penelope. Her face was covered in angry red splotches, and she looked as though she was about to murder someone. "Are you all right, Penelope? I must apologize for my brother's actions," said Eloise quietly. Penelope turned towards her, briefly letting go of her arm. "Why would it matter to your brother who I courted? You think he would be happy that one of his supported friends was finally receiving attention from the opposite sex?" Eloise looked down at her shoes, unsure of what to say. "I am sorry, Pen. I do not know what came over him. Although I do think he was correct about Fife, I do not think that he is a good match for you." "For once I would have to agree with Eloise, Pen, as much as it pains me," said Michael, casting a glance at Eloise. "Fife is an absolute scoundrel. You are entirely too good for him." Eloise smiled at Michael and was grateful that they were on the same page when it came to Lord Fife. Eloise was aware that Penelope and Michael were not actually courting, but had become rather good friends. When they initially began spending more time together last season, Eloise had felt slightly bereft, as if her best friend was being stolen from her. But her feelings changed when she realised how good Michael was for Penelope. Eloise had known Penelope since they had been 5 years old, and Penelope always struggled with insecurities and her feelings of self-worth. Michael had performed miracles in building back in the self-confidence, and Eloise had seen a change in her dearest friend. She was no longer hiding in the corners of the ballrooms, but an active participant in events. The members of the Ton soon realised that who they thought was a perennial wallflower was actually one of the most intelligent and witty young ladies of the Ton. "I am not seriously considering Fife," replied Eloise as she rolled her eyes. "He is indeed a scoundrel, and he has never had anything interesting to say other than the amount he won in a gaming table. And you know how thrilling I find that," said Penelope, rolling her eyes once more. "I just do not know why Colin acted that way." "You are like a sister to him, Pen. He is just being a protective brother. I am sure he would be acting the same way if I was being courted by nearly every eligible bachelor in the Ton," teased Eloise, while Michael let out a snort. Eloise sent Michael a quizzical stare, but did not have the time to question him as they arrived at the Featheringtons' front door. "Thank you for walking me home," said Eloise, her voice weary. "I would invite you in for tea, but I'm afraid that I have a bit of a headache. I should like to rest for a while." "Please think nothing of it, Pen. You go in and rest. Michael will escort me home," replied Eloise, kissing her on the cheeks. "Yes, get some rest, Pen. You will need it for when we go riding tomorrow," said Michael, which earned him a scowl from Pen. "Until tomorrow, then," said Penelope, before turning her back and making her way into the house. Eloise and Michael watched Penelope until their butler shut their door behind them. Eloise took Michael's proffered arm and he began to walk her back to number 5. They had been walking for several moments in silence before she heard Michael clear her throat. "Did you say something, Michael?" asked Eloise. "Your brother is an idiot," said Michael. "That he is," replied Eloise, as she contemplated Colin's behaviour. Why had he been so upset about Penelope courting? In her mind, he should be happy that his comments did not put Penelope firmly on the shelf. "I just do not understand him." "Can you really not?" asked Michael. "Do you really not see the way he looks at her?" "The way Colin looks at Penelope? In what way does he look at her?" asked Eloise, completely befuddled. Michael smirked before looking down at Eloise. "Like he wants to devour her." Eloise let out a chortling laugh, drawing the people passing by them to stare, but Eloise paid them no mind. "You do not know my brother, Michael. Colin likes to devour everything." Michael laughed, but then shook his head in disbelief. "You really cannot see it, can you?" When Eloise simply shook her head, he continued, "Your brother is head over heels in love with Penelope." "How do you think I acquired this monstrosity?" said Michael as he pointed to his blackened eye. Eloise stared at him. But you said that you and my brothers were at the club and got into a fight with another patron. You are saying that Colin was the one to strike you at the club? No, in fact we were in your kitchen. Your brother knocked me flat on my ass. Rather impressive, actually, mused Michael as he touched his swollen cheek. Eloise shook her head disbelievingly. Colin has never been the sort of man to resort to violence. He has always been so. Eloise paused, searching for the right word. He has always been so charming and happy. Michael smiled and tipped his hat to Lady Cowper and Cressida Cowper, who were walking past them, before turning back to her and whispering, Colin saw what he believed was the man that Penelope was courting, and his anger took over. Eloise paused and looked up at Michael. Why would Colin think that you were courting Penelope? You only became friends with Penelope after Colin left. How would he even know of your existence or your relationship with Penelope? Asked Eloise, her hands on her hips. Oh dear, I believe I may have revealed a bit too much, replied Michael, his cheeks turning a little pink with embarrassment. I suppose I should tell you what is going on. I suppose you should, replied Eloise, haughtily. Eloise remained silent as Michael recanted the story of the night. He met a drunken Colin at Mondrick's, and the night he had met Penelope, and the subsequent meetings with Anthony, Benedict, and even Hyacinth's bribes, and their plans to get Colin to return to England. Does Penelope know about any of this? No, replied Michael emphatically, and I would rather that she did not find out. So you concocted this plan with my siblings, because you believe Colin to be in love with Penelope? Asked Eloise. Michael smiled sheepishly. It worked, did it not? He arrived back in England weeks before his supposed arrival, and the first thing he did was punch me in the face. He clearly received Hyacinth's letter and hastened back to England, said Michael before taking a small pause. You should have seen him that night at Modrick's. The way he spoke of Penelope, he was clearly a man in love, although he did not seem to want to admit it to himself. It seems as if he is finally ready, and you and I both know that Penelope reciprocates his feelings. The news that Colin could return Penelope's feelings came as quite a shock to Penelope. The news that Colin could return Penelope's feelings came as quite the shock for Eloise. She had always believed that they would be a good match, but has never said anything because she believed Colin to be indifferent to Penelope, at least as far as romantic intentions were concerned. Although it did not escape her attention that Colin seemed to light up when Penelope was near, but she had thought it was because they were friends. If Colin were truly serious about Penelope, and wanting to court her with the intention of marriage, could their relationship actually work? Would they both be able to look past wrongs? Would Penelope be able to honestly forgive Colin after his despicable words last season, and would Colin be able to forgive Pen's biggest secret? Upon thinking of Lady Whistledown, Eloise felt herself becoming nauseous and became weak at the knees. Oh no, whimpered Eloise as she covered her mouth with her hand. She had no doubt that Penelope would find it in her heart to forgive Colin. But would he be able to give her when she told him that she was Lady Whistledown? She had effectively ended his engagement with Marina by outing her cousin's pregnancy, and had essentially enveloped the Bridgertons and Penelope's own family in scandal. What is it, Eloise? Asked Michael, suddenly noticing that Eloise was in distress. Penelope, she is... Eloise said before catching herself. She would not and could not tell Penelope's secret. It would be her dearest friend's ruination. Shaking her head, Eloise pasted what she hoped was a genuine smile on her face. It is nothing, she replied as Michael deposited her on the front steps of her home. Michael was staring at her intently, and she looked up at him expectantly. Well, thank you for seeing me back safely. Michael smiled and leaned down to whisper in her ear. Eloise, are you perchance worried how Colin will react when he finds out that Penelope is in fact Lady Whistledown? Eloise gasped and pulled her arm out of Michael's arm. You think Penelope is Lady Whistledown? Michael smirked again. Eloise, I know she is. Knowing that she could no longer keep up the facade, Eloise let her face fall. Did she tell you? No, but her letters and Lady Whistledown's columns seemed so similar. I did some investigating and discovered her scheme, and how she was getting the column to the printer via Madame Delacroix's shop. Eloise scoffed. So you did not know, and I am essentially the one that has confirmed it. Essentially, yes. Why are you so concerned that Colin would not be able to forgive Penelope? I believe that Pen did your brother a favour, said Michael as he crossed his arms over his chest. Colin believed himself to be in love with Miss Thompson. He was devastated at her deceit and was ever so angry with Whistledown for uncovering it, whispered Eloise. Colin had even told Marina that if she had only been honest with him, he would have married her anyway, despite the fact that she was carrying another man's child. That was how in love with Marina that Colin thought himself to be. He even visited her at Romney Hall last season. I believe he needed closure. He wanted to make sure that Miss Thompson was happy. And was she? I suppose so. Colin did not mention anything about the time he spent with her, only that she had given birth to twins and that he quite enjoyed meeting her husband. Michael nodded. For what it is worth, Eloise, I do not believe that your brother would have been happy if he had married Miss Thompson. Penelope did your brother a great service by exposing her. Why do you say that? Asked Eloise. I know Lady Crane's husband, Sir Philip. I do not know if Penelope told you, but I help run my cousin's estate in Scotland. We are looking to modernise our irrigation systems, and I had sought out Lord Crane. You see, Lord Crane is an accomplished botanist and scholar, and I wanted his opinion on crops. When I went to see him, his wife had recently given birth. She was cordial and polite, but there was a sadness to her, and that sadness seemed to permeate anything and everyone in that house. I know that Sir Philip married Miss Thompson because she was expecting his late brother's children. Miss Thompson had been in love with Sir Philip's brother, Sir George. But I am sure you are aware that he died in battle. Sir Philip considered it his duty to look out for Miss Thompson and his brother's children. I do not think that Lady Crane has ever recovered from Sir George's death, and that house is shrouded in grief, not only by Lady Crane, but Sir Philip as well. I would not wish that unhappiness on anyone, and I know that you would not have wanted Colin to have such a melancholy marriage. Eloise frowned. No, indeed, I would not. The thought alone that Colin may have been trapped in such an unhappy situation makes my heart ache. Do not fret, Eloise. If and when Penelope tells Colin of her alter ego, I do not believe Colin will be upset for awfully long. I believe your brother loves Penelope, and will be able to understand her motives. I hope that you are right, Michael, replied Eloise. It was then that the front door opened, revealing Humboldt. Eloise looked at Michael. Would you like to come in again, Michael? Thank you, Miss Eloise, but I fear if I do, I will obtain another beating from your brother. Please, give your family my best wishes. Of course, replied Eloise politely. She watched as Michael bowed and walked down the street. She turned back to Humboldt, who was eyeing her carefully. There is never a dull moment in this family, Humboldt, said Eloise with a roll of her eyes. Humboldt, who was still looking tired from the previous evening, let out an indignified snort. Indeed, miss. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Okay, I never thought so much could happen in just a walk across the street, but yeah, life is weird. Wow, okay, so, let's see how this goes, shall we? See you in another video, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. Make sure to check out my others as well. Bye!